Hey beauties, I'm Melissa Berry, founder of Cancer Fashionista. Thank you for tuning into this special series that is really near and dear to my heart called Empowered Intimacy, Getting Your Sexy Back After Breast Cancer. This series is particularly important to me because as a breast cancer survivor, I know firsthand the challenges and emotional journey that come with a diagnosis. It's not just about surviving, it's about rediscovering and reclaiming your sense of self, confidence, and intimacy after going through such a life-changing experience. Through our own experiences and personal stories, my friend Deltra and I are going to explore the super challenging intersection of sexual health and breast cancer, providing support, inspiration, and practical advice to help you feel empowered and sexy once again. As we dive into these important discussions, we're going to help you find strength and help you get your sexy back. In this episode, we're going to share our personal breast cancer stories and the steps we took to regain our self-esteem and, most importantly, how we got our groove back. I love how it's like Deltra, like there's no last name, it's like Madonna. Sorry. I kind of like, this is very surreal for us to be here right now.
It is.
It all started with, Ricky from Touch, the Black Breast Cancer Alliance. She was like, sexual health, breast cancer, you got to talk to Deltra. And she introduced us, and you were on my podcast. And I felt like we were barely like scratching the surface.
Yeah.
We talked about breast cancer. Actually, we talked about metastatic breast cancer and dating. And I felt like, I was like kind of hot and sweaty after we were done. I'm like, we're not done yet. And I had this dream, this vision that we had to do it again. So here we are, video, lights, camera, action. But all that to say, like, I'm just so glad that our paths have crossed. I think you're amazing.
Me too. I think you're pretty amazing too.
And you're kind of hot.
Yeah, I got to say the same. I'm a girl's girl through and through, so.
Well, you're beautiful and inside and out. And I'm just like so excited to have these conversations with you because we're going to go there.
Yes.
We're going to go there. And I think it's time. And I want to take the taboo and the scariness out of, because breast cancer and sex, like, those two can be very difficult, very challenging, create a lot of challenging obstacles. So before we get to all the dating and the sexy stuff, I want to like share our stories with each other and with everyone listening. So take turns. Like, tell me your story. Like, when were you diagnosed and how did you even find out you had breast cancer?
So way back in 2019, so I'm coming up on that big milestone of 5 whole years. I happened to find a lump in my left breast, found it myself like most women under 40. I was 33 at the time. And it's not like a big moment in my head because it wasn't like breast cancer was not on my radar whatsoever. As far as I knew, there was no family history. I wasn't checking on it. But I noticed a lump and I went ahead and, saw my doctor, even though I wasn't very concerned.
So you weren't like freaking out?
No.
You were just like,
I wasn't
think I have
freaking out at all.
Okay.
Yeah. I just figured like maybe it's a cyst or, something, definitely not cancer. And then I went and I saw my doctor and she, because I was pretty young and no history, she also wasn't concerned, but just to give me that added peace of mind, she went ahead and scheduled an ultrasound and got me in, boom, ultrasound that same week. And then the following week I had a biopsy because the ultrasound was the first time that I started to feel kind of nervous. You're always watching the ultrasound tech and mine started to look visibly, so concerned.
Now you're like, oh shit.
Yeah, like what is happening? And she actually brought in the person who reads so he came in and then I was really like, what is happening? But again, because of my age, he was like, it's probably just, cysts or fibroids. So they got me in for a biopsy the following week. And just 2-3 days later, I got a call letting me know that it was cancer. And, that's a lot to process, getting thrown into the cancer world.
Like tremendous.
Yes. And then I had all the tests, all the scans, and I went from hearing you have cancer to within 3 weeks hearing you have stage 4 cancer because it was already in my liver. So that was a whole lot to process.
And how old were you?
I was 33.
Wow.
Yeah, 33.
And you have kids.
Yeah, busy raising my 5 girls. Who were 4. The youngest was 4. The oldest was 13 at the time. So it was a lot to take in. And being stage 4, everything kind of got snatched off the table, like surgery. It's, I had no idea it was not standard of care for someone who was stage 4 from the beginning, or de novo, as they say.
Right.
Because when you think breast cancer, you immediately, associate it with surgery.
Right,
and,
like your breasts are going to be
mastectomy.
removed
Yeah.
and everything.
And, so I was kind of gearing up my mind, that, all right, I'm going to have to get surgery and everything. So that got snatched off the table. And then a couple years into my diagnosis, I really fought for a lumpectomy because my body was having a really awesome response to my treatment.
It's amazing.
And the pesky liver met that I had, because I just had a single met to my liver, was gone within the first couple months of chemo.
Thank God.
Never to return, thankfully.
Thank God.
Yes. But just the pesky breast tumor, the primary tumor, was not going away. And so in 2022, I ended up getting a lumpectomy.
And how did you feel about that? Did it leave a scar? Did it change your body in any way, or change the way you felt about your body?
Yeah, it did leave a scar. And I was actually kind of surprised by, my reaction to the scar, I guess, because in my head I was like, well, it's just going to be a small scar. It's not, it'll be nothing in comparison to having like a full mastectomy. So,
right.
But, it's an adjustment because you're used to wearing certain clothes and you have to adjust to, this new marking on your body. And for me, aside from my port, I kind of felt like, oh, well, I look, as I like to say, healthy presenting. And so you get to go out into the world and, I feel like it's my choice whether I hold, my cancer diagnosis close to my chest, no pun intended,
right,
or not.
Right.
But with this new scar from my lumpectomy, and especially while navigating dating after a divorce, it definitely played, had an effect on my self-esteem for a bit.
Totally. And where were you with your divorce in terms of your breast cancer diagnosis and treatment? What did that timeline look like?
So it was really wild. At the time that I was diagnosed, I had been married for a decade. But the marriage, was a cancer in my life in and of itself. I always say it was like a cancer that only I could get rid of.
Okay.
And right before my diagnosis, I had finally made the decision, I'm just going to go ahead and tell my husband at the time, that I was done. But you get such a scary, shocking diagnosis. It rocks your world.
Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it turns everything upside down.
Yeah, and I felt so out of control. I just wanted to cling to anything that I could that would make me feel like I had some grounding. And so I tried to stay in my marriage. But I learned very quickly that, what they say is true, that someone's not going to magically, become an awesome caregiver. You get, even people who have a really solid relationship, it's a struggle when a diagnosis comes.
Yeah. And
so if you already have a, cracks in your foundation.
Exactly.
It's gonna, things are gonna crumble.
And you had triple negative breast cancer like me. Yep,
both triple negatives, which I had never even heard of. Didn't even know there were different subtypes.
I didn't even know there were different types of breast cancer. I'm like,
either.
triple negative, what's that?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I mean, we've spoken about your story before, but every time I hear it, I'm just like, wow, you're amazing and you're hitting your 5-year. Yes. I had triple negative also, a different story. And that's why, I think it's really cool that we're sitting here talking, because I think the two of us represent a lot of different cases and a lot of different women. In my case, I was married for 19 years.
Wow.
I was followed very closely with breast, because I had so much breast cancer in my family, and my mom was like, typical Jewish mom, you need to get tested for the BRCA gene. We have so much, cancer in our family. And I was like, fine, I'll get tested for this was when I was 32. I got tested for the BRCA gene, and I kind of knew that I was a carrier, but I was so afraid of confirming that.
Yeah,
but I think in my mind it was scarier to get cancer, knowing I had such a strong family history. So thanks to my mom for making me go and getting that test. And then I was closely monitored. And then when I was 42, I was diagnosed, and different situation than you. I mean, I was stage 1, but I had to have the bilateral mastectomy, and losing my breasts was really, and I think just the initial, like, just even finding out that I was going to lose my breast, it's so hard to wrap your head around it, because it happens so fast. Like, from the time they say, oh, we see something, to the time, treatment plan, your head is freaking spinning, right? So like, I just remember thinking, and even before I was diagnosed with breast cancer, as a preventative measure, when I was 39, I had my ovaries removed, and I'm like, F this. I am not getting breast cancer. I'm eating kale. I'm doing yoga. I had my flipping ovaries removed, but still I was diagnosed, and losing my breasts, that was a really tough part of it. And I think, for me, like, similar to you, like, the scar is really hard to, you catch yourself in the mirror. You're like, who is that even? And then I remember when I was sort of in between my surgeries, like when I had the expanders in and no nipples, it was scary. And I felt like, how am I ever going to love myself again? And forget about, like, loving yourself, but then how do you expect your partner to be like, babe, you look beautiful no matter what? Yeah. So, like, in putting together this series, it's like we wanted this episode, this conversation right now, to be about, like, how the hell do you love yourself again when you feel like you've lost so much? Like, what did you do knowing that you had a lumpectomy and now you're faced with stage 4 metastatic triple negative breast cancer? Like, what did you do to try and get, like, your groove back? Because I know how awesome you are, and you were probably always fun and flirty and sexy and all that stuff. But, like, I'm sure it knocked you off the ground for a little bit, right?
Yeah. Honestly, I hadn't felt like I was those words you just used to describe me for a long time, like in my marriage. So I really had to, like, find my footing again. It was about, like, rediscovering who I was before.
Oh, so you weren't this Deltra when you were married.
Yeah.
This.
Maybe before, but then, I, like, lost over time. It's like, struggling marriage, being stay-at-home mom day in and day out, and, like, everybody else is coming first.
Yep.
And so it was a mix of, like, rediscovering me and rebuild. Like, you're kind of a different person after a cancer diagnosis, after a divorce, so after becoming a mom. Like, you just kind of, like, almost regenerate.
Oh my God, you bring up such a valid point. It's so true, because, like, I've always said, like, I felt like, in a way, breast cancer, like, I had to take myself apart and put myself back together again.
Yeah.
And then you throw divorce into that, and it's like a whole, like, you're redoing your life, your whole identity, and it makes you, like, think about what you really want.
Yes.
In life.
Yeah, it makes you really aware of how short life is. And, that's what happened with my marriage, too. With me, my initial reaction to my diagnosis was cling to absolutely everything and everyone that, is around me.
Yeah.
And then before I knew it, I realized, like, oh, there are certain other things that are unhealthy in your life that you need to let go of.
Yeah.
To, like, live well and, have joy.
Definitely. So. And I think, like, whether you're single or not, like, loving yourself, and it sounds so cliche, we hear about all the time, you see memes, love yourself.
Yes.
But you really need to, I think, do that in order to even entertain having someone else in your life. And now we're going to start to go a little deeper. Like, that was sort of foreplay.
Foreplay is important. Should last a while.
Yes.
So.
Being intimate with ourselves. I mean, I'll tell you straight up, I didn't really pleasure myself when I was in my marriage. And even before that, it wasn't something I did, and no judgment. It wasn't part of what I did. And when my marriage was failing, I actually kind of discovered it. And I was like, wow, like, it made me feel beautiful. It made me feel sexy. It, like, definitely lit the house up a little bit more. And I think when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I think I had a harder time, like, even being intimate with myself.
Yeah.
Like, where are you in that whole story? Like,
yeah, so I had a similar experience where when I was married, like, it just didn't even cross my mind to, like, take care of myself in that kind of way. So when I got divorced, especially once I got into my own place, we've talked about this before, like, the pros and cons of like having your own space. But, you know, it takes a while to get used to. You were married for 19 years, so you know I was married for 12. It's really challenging to, you know, even little things like, oh, now I have this whole like bed to myself. And so for me, I remember I saw this meme on Instagram, and it was like, honey, I own a weighted blanket and a great vibrator. I don't need you. And I was like, you know what? Yes, because I had never owned.
I do have a weighted blanket also.
I do. Oh, God, amazing. Yes, I love I could not. I mean, I wish I could pack it in a suitcase because it gives me the best sleep. But I mean, I never had bought myself like toys or anything until after my marriage, you know. I knew I wasn't going to have a partner around all the time.
Yeah.
So I just kind of like wanted to explore that for myself. So
I'd like to give a very special thanks to my sponsors, Daiichi-Sankyo, AstraZeneca, and Lilly, for supporting the Cancer Fashionista Foundation and making the Empowered Intimacy, Getting Your Sexy Back After Breast Cancer series possible. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use the content for medical advice to treat any medical condition in either yourself or others. Please consult your own physician for any medical issues that you may be having. This disclaimer also applies to all of my guests. Definitely,
Yeah.
It's so important. And full disclosure, I remember when we heard about a little something called COVID and the lockdown, I was like, Amazon, search, best vibrator ever. Because, you know, I was single at the time. I'm like, this is getting serious, you know.
Right.
And, you know, one of the reasons, and as I'm saying this, I'm actually thinking my daughters might listen to this. Oh, God, my dad might listen to this. You know, the reason I want to have these conversations is I want to take the taboo out of it.
Yeah.
It is not dirty.
Normalize
And like,
it.
honestly, pleasuring yourself, especially when you're going through treatment, you know, depending upon where you are physically, can actually be such a source of joy.
Yes.
And a great release. So I just want
Yeah.
to like make it like, I just don't want it to be taboo.
yeah.
Do you agree?
I 100% agree. I'm always saying, you know, well, as someone living with stage 4, it's important to me to remember that we all just become stories one day. I always think of that, and I want to be, you know, what kind of story do I want to be? I definitely want there to be some fun, funny, and like, you know, inspiring stories about me for especially my daughters.
How many daughters do you have?
5 girls.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
It's a lot of,
and it's
a lot of
important to me.
a lot of conversations
Yeah.
about the birds and the bees and all that
So
stuff. Oh
many.
my gosh.
But I've always been really open and honest, and it was always important to me that my girls know that like I'm not just mom, because it's so easy to become just mom.
Totally.
To especially your kids, you know. And I wanted them to know I'm not a one-dimensional character. I'm more than your mother. Yes, I have a life outside of you, especially once I was dating. You know, they kind of got to see that, and they definitely got to see more of like, oh, fun mom is
love
back.
that.
Mom who gets dressed up and stuff is back, you know?
Right, because you have a
and
life
so that's
outside
really,
of being a mother, with all due respect to our children.
Yes,
They need to
you
see
know?
that.
Yeah, and what you were saying before about, you know, like getting used to pleasuring yourself and it's like a stress relief. Yes, because I mean, if my daughters ever listen to this, the teens or something, the difference between me being a rah 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 mom in the morning and Mary Poppins is if I had time before they woke up to like have some intimate time by myself.
Wow, isn't that something? And that's amazing. That's amazing. And honestly, I have friends that I've, you know, shared this with, and they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, what are you afraid of? Like, give it a try.
Yes.
And so
Big advocate
it kind
for
of
it.
like winds back to, it's part of loving yourself,
Yes.
you know, and accepting yourself. And that's a beautiful thing, you know?
And knowing what you like so you can share it with, you know, the
Absolutely.
people you want to share it with. so.
Absolutely. Like, and, you know, and sort of going back to like when I was married, because my now ex-husband, he was really incredibly supportive through my whole breast cancer experience.
awesome.
And no judgment at all. And I think it was more me, like catching myself in the mirror, like after the initial surgery. And I remember, I'm gonna get emotional. I remember like oddly enough, when I had the nipple reconstruction, I remember when I took like the bandages off, I was like, oh my God, I look like Raggedy Ann. Like literally felt like I was being taken apart and putting back together again. And I felt like, you know, how am I ever going to feel like beautiful again, ever?
Yeah.
And then the whole element of like being touched. I remember thinking I didn't even want to be too close to someone in an elevator. I felt like I was like a piece of glass from the surgery, you know? And it's like, so to go from, that's why I wanted to have this particular conversation to kind of kick off the series, because you can't go from like the OR room to like full on,
Yeah.
like, you know, porn hub style, you know, sex.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. Like, there's so much that needs to happen from the time you're diagnosed to like the time where you can be, you know, get back to yourself or find your new self, like we did.
Yeah.
Do you think? Like,
And
it's
I
just a
100%
process.
acknowledge. I think the process, I mean, obviously it can look different for different personalities. And I did feel like, oh, my lumpectomy is not like a big deal, you know, especially compared to someone who had to go through losing both breasts, losing nipples, you know, having to wear drains and all of that. But I mean, for me, I still had to like figure out ways to feel confident. I was actually already in the midst of dating. There were people that I had been dating for like 6 months at the time. Some didn't
During
even know.
treatment?
Yeah, and
Wow.
at the time that I had got my lumpectomy, and I was like, how do I tell them? Because now I feel like I'm gonna have to, you know, do some sort of explaining, you know,
Right.
because some of them didn't even know about my diagnosis. And I know I've like shared this with you before. I think that. I did like, I think the recovery time for my lumpectomy was like a couple weeks.
Ooh,
it
that's
was
pretty
still
good.
really tender.
Yeah.
But I was out there. I was like on
You're ready to
dates.
rock and roll.
I was hanging out like a teenager, like parked in the dark at like a lake or something. Oh my God. I was like, just don't touch me here, all right? We got to be careful. But because I'm, you know, I was like, I just had this done, and
That's
like
so
I'm sensitive.
amazing.
But something that helped me was like, you know, maybe I didn't feel comfortable enough at the time to you know, like have my top entirely off or something yet. But things like, you know, we love Ana Ono, stuff like that. Sexy,
can we say that again?
sexy
We
bras.
love Ana Ono.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Sexy bras, you know, things like that made a big difference, and no one ever complained like, why won't you take that off completely, you know? And it was about like
Is
me,
that
it helped
amazing?
me to feel like just that little, you know, choice of like, oh, I'm gonna wear a really sexy top or something, made me act like a totally different person in the situation, like feel very comfortable and confident.
I love that. Like, I want to bottle that up. I wish I had that little message on a post-it on my mirror somewhere when I was going through treatment, because I was so far from that. And that's, I think, why I ultimately ended up doing what I'm doing, because it saddened me and broke me so much as a woman that I just never wanted anyone to ever feel that way again, ever again. And, you know, it's just such a surprise when you're dying. Like, it's nothing that any of us can prepare for.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, like, we need to be sort of like the big sisters, because your doctor's not sharing this information. No. We love our doctors.
They're very focused on keeping us just alive.
Saving our lives, right? And then our besties, yes, they can talk to us about sex all day and night, but they don't know it through the lens of a breast cancer survivor or having a lumpectomy or total reconstruction.
Yeah, exactly. And it's hard enough for people who are in, like I said, a solid relationship to like share this new body, you know, with their person who already knows and loves them as a person.
Right.
So I just felt really overwhelmed sharing it with people who don't already know me as a person, you know,
Right.
Who we don't already have like this deep emotional safety, you know, connections. So that's
Exactly.
really hard to navigate.
It's so
too.
hard. And like, I think that's why it's so important that we don't need to jump to that necessarily like right away. Like, I think a lot of the times when I really felt like, I always say, like almost like a shell of myself, and I had no hair and I had barely any breasts and no nipples, and I thought, all right, what's going to make me feel great today? So maybe I would go to CVS or Target and get a new lip gloss, or
Yes.
try some false eyelashes. And like, it sounds so surface, but those things help so much and help you feel pretty. And I feel like helped me get my groove back a little bit. Like, even if my ex-husband would be like, hey, let's do a date night. Like, I would feel good knowing that I had, even though I didn't feel like myself anymore, putting some lip gloss on, putting my wig on, like,
Yeah.
all those little things help and kind of move towards the process of either feeling like your old self again or reinventing yourself completely. Like it sounds like what you kind of did, and I kind of did a lot of that too, to get to the point of loving ourselves again, which could be a new version of ourselves.
Yep.
I love that.
Yeah, it's tricky because, you know, we hear it time and time again that breast cancer, you know, cancer, especially women, it just feels like it rips away everything that makes you feel feminine.
Yeah.
And that's tough.
Yeah.
That's really tough to know. And I'm someone who I wore wigs for like a gazillion years before my just for fun. But
when you have honest,
yeah.
Like I can't even. I mean, I know you have many, but she's my favorite.
Yes, it's very. No, maybe we should give her a name. She's
names.
Like very fallish and Auburn. We gotta think of a name.
We'll just call her Auburn.
Right?
Sound like a hooker name?
Aubrey. What? Auburn. Lady Auburn. But yeah, it's really
your
different.
New Instagram handle.
I know, right? I'll have to credit you. But yeah, it's really different, you know, when it's a choice to wear them instead of like a necessity.
Definitely.
And you don't have any hair. Right. And like I said, dating and trying to, you know, like,
so
man, I had to figure out so much. Yeah, because I had been in a marriage and I was like, oh, if I'm doing stuff, rip the wig off, you know?
Right.
And didn't care. But then I was like navigating. I was like, all right, let me get a hair grip.
Oh, so if we're in motion, we need to keep the wig on.
You know, you got to think about positioning and stuff so that you don't, you know. But again, at the end of the day, it was all about, it's more fun and enjoyable when you are feeling confident and comfortable in your skin.
Absolutely. And that's why, like, and for those of us that are listening that are single, like, do it for yourself. Do it for, like, feeling hot when you're going to the office or going on the Zoom meeting or picking your kid up from school or going to Whole Foods to pick up some kale. I don't know. Like, why not feel great about yourself even when you're – and a lot of – you know, I get a lot of feedback. Well, like, I don't even feel like putting lipstick on. Like, and sometimes it could be as simple as lipstick or, you know what, also, like, when I was in between surgeries, like, I experimented with nipple tattoos. And everyone's story and journey is different with, like, breasts and nipples. Like, I love my flatties. And I love the no nips.
Yes.
And everyone has their own personal take on it. Sidebar, I had my breasts reconstructed, and I did have my doctor do full nipple reconstruction. But then, like, less than a year ago at NIBRA, Marnie Rustmeyer, who I love, I needed, like, a touch-up. Like, they were starting to fade, which I didn't know. It's another reason I'm having these conversations. Who knew that, like, your nipple tattoo would fade? After a while, they do. And she was like, can you send me, like, what's your inspiration? Like, what look are you going for? And I'm thinking, I don't know. And she's like, I'm like, what do people ask for? She's like, I've gotten Marilyn Monroe. Now I'm Googling.
What?
Legit Googling, like, celebrity nipples. So now, like, you can only imagine what my, like, what the, you know, the algorithm is doing. So I started to look, and I'm like, which actresses do I love? I'm like, Anne Hathaway. And I actually found a picture of her nipples. Beautiful.
I was going to say, there's pictures out there of
yes.
Miss Marilyn Monroe's nipples, though.
Anne Hathaway's listening. Girl, I got nips. I know, it's, like, super weird.
I didn't know there were more things to love about Anne Hathaway, but wow.
Who knew? Where am I going with this? What I'm going with this is, like, breast cancer can literally make you feel like you're not a woman anymore, but there are ways around it, and there are many resources out there, like trying nipple tattoos or you know,
now they've got the nipple stickers and little like pasties. Yeah, perkiness.
Yeah, I've even seen one nipple tattoos that have like little earrings. Like they're really
my
detailed.
Gosh.
Yeah. So my point is, like, you know, you don't have to do it for someone else. You could do it for yourself. Like, for me, like, taking the marriage and everything away, like, I wanted to have my nipples back. I wanted to try and, like I always say, I didn't need to look like a supermodel. I just wanted to look like the best version of myself. Yeah. And I think that's, you know, that's part of loving yourself again. And it takes some time and I think introspection to even sit and be like, maybe I can reinvent myself. Maybe I can get Marilyn Monroe nipples or whoever, or, you know, get different wigs, take on different personalities, and play with it. Yes. But it's all easier said than done. I know when you're first diagnosed and you're in it, and even watching something like this, it's like, how do I get there? You know?
Yeah. Hard to imagine.
Like, what would you say is like your best advice for someone that was like diagnosed this morning, like as far as like feeling beautiful again?
Oh man. Yeah, I think it's fair to, you know, the feelings are totally valid. And I think it's fair to sit with them for a minute. But then, I'm never going to tell someone to like try and find a silver lining, but take it as an opportunity to rebuild yourself, to reinvent yourself. And again, it's like you said, you could feel like, robots are like you're being taken apart and everything, but you get to do the putting yourself back together. So you can think about who do you want to be. Like I always joke that my different wigs bring out like different personalities and such. And so that's always fun to play with.
Tell me, is this your favorite wig? Or
this is definitely a favorite. I have it in like multiple colors because it's such a favorite. And it's so much hair. It's very Beyonce.
I love the way you say that too.
You can't wear it and feel like...
Yeah, it's just little old me.
No.
Where are the oranges?
No. But it's fair to sit with those feelings because you get to mourn. You get to be excited for the future, which you do have. It may look different than planned, but I'm alive and breathing right now.
Because it's not all about. Okay, I was diagnosed today. Let me go to CVS and get some. We're not saying that. Like you do have to sit in it, and there is perfectly worded. Like there is a time of grieving. And listen, I'm 11 years out, and I will still have my moments where maybe I'll try on a strapless bathing suit and it doesn't feel good, and I'm like, damn, I can't wear this anymore.
Yeah.
But then I think about the things that I still look great in and I can wear. Just these funny little sidebars. I discovered as a result of my reconstruction that I lost some feeling in my breasts, and I remember one day my kids were little, but I did have a strapless bikini on, and because I don't have a lot of feeling in my breasts. Let's just say that I didn't feel the top creeping down to my midsection, and my daughters were like, "Mommy, your bathing suit's off."
You're not the first story that I've heard of that.
So note to self: very difficult to wear. I can wear strapless jumpsuits, oddly enough, but not so much in the bathing suit. I don't think I would take that chance again.
Yeah, little risky.
A little risky. Some of the downsides of reconstruction, but all things to say, I can't complain. I mean, I do have the Anne Hathaway nips.
Awesome.
No, but I also do like
you get to brag on that. I think you need to bring that up more. Why aren't you? Like it should be posted on your Instagrams.
Now everybody knows. But yeah, it's all part of the process. But I do love what you say about silver lining because it's so easy to say silver lining or like, you hear people, and this is so like taboo in the breast cancer community. Oh, you get new boobs.
Yes,
that is like,
a boob job when it's
never.
not.
It's so not about that. But I am more symmetrical than I was before I had breast cancer because I think we may have been talking. I nursed both of my kids and I nursed my left side, so it was much smaller. Yeah. So I was able to even them out. That was a plus for me. We all have our positives that come out of it. But you're amazing, and I honestly can't wait to talk about our next episode. We're just gonna keep diving deeper and deeper into dating.
Yes, it's one of my favorite things to talk about.
I know, because when we first had our podcast episode, I remember I was so impressed with you because I'm like, wait, this girl, stage 4 metastatic breast cancer, and you were on the apps, no problem, dating profiles. I wish that I knew you when I was first stepping into the dating scene because I think it would have been a lot easier to have that level of understanding when I was putting myself out there. But I could hear my producer saying in my ear, shh, shh. Let's save that for the next episode.
Slow it down.
Slow it down, Melissa. Easy. We have more time to talk, but you're amazing. I can't wait to tune in for everyone to tune into our next episode about dating, and we're just gonna keep going there, girl.
We are together.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Empowered Intimacy: Getting Your Sexy Back After Breast Cancer. If you enjoyed it, be sure to check out the rest of our episodes in this series. In the meantime, let's stay in touch. Be sure to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Cancer Fashionista. And remember, cancer can take many things away from you, but it can't take away the essence that makes you the beautiful woman that you are.